Well, Denise Welch, who is a household name thanks to her starring role on Coronation Street and regular spot on the Loose Women panel, has become one of the most effective voices fighting against inhumane regulations having a disastrous impact on the psychological health of the nation throughout the pandemic. And Denise joins me now. Denise, absolutely heartbreaking watching that from Liz Saville-Roberts. You lost your father recently.
I did, September, yeah.
Condolences.
Thank you.
Why are we putting people through this again?
Dan, it's one of the reasons that I started talking out about this. If I can just précis, because sometimes people ask me why I became so committed to this cause. And it always stems from my work as an ambassador for a spokesperson for mental health because of my own mental illness that I've had, as you well know, for over 30 years. And I was aware very early on that this was going to become a pandemic of the mentally ill, or certainly mental health crisis, because we've never had parity for physical and mental health before. And mine started as long ago in the first lockdown when the bridge meetings were happening. So we were all outside clapping for carers, which we all love to do, and we were told to be at our doors with a pot and a pan, and we clapped for carers. Meanwhile, for 4 to 5 weeks, Westminster Bridge, outside Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, crowds gathered, including the emergency services, the ambulances, the police, the fire engines, creating a carnival atmosphere. All the nurses came pouring out the hospital, and suddenly COVID disappeared on a Thursday night. Now, if you ever said anything against the NHS, you were akin to a murderer. And I remember thinking then, hang on, I smell massive BS here, because at the same time, people were being threatened with arrest for comforting a relative who had lost their husband of 50 years. They were threatened with arrest for coming near them. While on a Thursday night, people took the karaoke machines down and a doi-doi-doi and bottles of wine, and a picnic happened, and I thought, nah. This is not happening. And I saw the hypocrisy. And as you know, once you've seen the emperor with no clothes, you can't see him with them back on again. Then, of course, I was aware that the visiting was stopping. We all understood that there had to be certain precautions taken. But my dad died in September. He took ill last Christmas Day. Another reason why I'm glad I broke the rules last Christmas Day, because it turned out to be my dad's last Christmas. And had I not driven with a dry mouth up the motorway, breaking the law, thinking I might be arrested, I wouldn't have spent my last Christmas with my dad. And so many people didn't break the rules because of this fear, this crazy, insane fear that has been instilled in people. Now they're stopping the visiting again. Dan, my dad died of pneumonia, separate to what he'd been in for, which was a gallbladder thing that lots of things went wrong, which was nobody's fault. And he was in several hospitals over that time in the northeast. We weren't able to visit quite a lot of the time, and it was possibly the most heartbreaking thing that I have ever been through in my entire life. And what upset me was that there was at the time that my dad was in one particular hospital and we couldn't visit for a month, there was hardly any COVID in the hospital. Now, we can listen to the NHS chiefs and we can listen to the government, but when you're talking to the people on the shop floor who say to you there is hardly any COVID in the hospital, but they have made a blanket ban over a certain area of the northeast, and I was having to talk to my dad in tears on FaceTime over the phone. When I was able, my sister and I spent many months when we could be in the hospital. Often we couldn't be in together. And some nurses were fabulous, some weren't fabulous. It's like in any business. They're not all wonderful. Some were incredible. Some of the doctors, I wouldn't want to ever be in their care because of their bedside manner. Personally, some were absolutely wonderful. But if my sister and I hadn't been in those hospitals with my dad at certain times, he would have died without a shadow of a doubt. And that's because it's so integral in a busy hospital. Sometimes it was busy, sometimes it wasn't busy. That things like you're looking after your family's dehydration. There were times that we would have to say, my dad's cognitive skills are going again. Are you sure that you've checked that he hasn't got a urine infection? Oh, let's just look at the notes here. Oh, we haven't really checked that for 2 weeks. We'll check it. Urine infection comes back. Of course he's got one. And that's why he was deteriorating. His advocate. I spoke to, before I came tonight, someone who I've become friendly with over this period, who runs a care home. She co-runs a care home in Surrey. I've spoken to the residents. I judged their Easter competition, their Christmas competition competition, all online, obviously. Fabulous bunch of people. Have they suffered with COVID? Yes, they have. They are currently allowed to have, they allow them they can only have 3 separate visitors. They have to visit in the room, but they are allowing those people to stay for as long as they want. But some people, some homes are now making blanket bans. Dan, those residents aren't worried about Omicron. They're worried about being kept away from their family in what is likely to be certainly the last couple of years, 6 months of their lives. This is a milder variant. Yes, of course, it's worse for some people. But I think we all know now, and people can go, you're not a virologist, you're not an epidemiologist. I speak to those people, though. You and I know who we speak to on a regular basis. I don't come on and say it because Joan from Facebook has said it. I'm not stupid. So I know what that, you know, and the fact is that these things can be managed in most cases. I understand that care homes are scared of COVID, but the fact is that these people are going to die lonely deaths if they don't get to see their families and friends. And I literally, it is the hill that I will die on, is this trying to advocate in a small way to take the fear out of people's lives. We can't go on like this. It's insane.
No, we can't. And it worries me that we haven't learned lessons fast enough. And I think one of the things that probably angers me most is that people who have been critical of lockdown have been accused in much of the mainstream media of somehow being cruel.
COVID deniers.
And also not caring about people's health or not caring about the numbers of death. And it's like, no, all we're trying to do is say there's a lot of health problems and there's a lot of death being caused by lockdown.
Absolutely. And some of us spotted this earlier. And, of course, a lot of people are sort of coming round to that.
Now.
You know, I mean, it's not like we knew everything. Of course we don't. And, of course, but they say follow the science. Which scientists? They're on complete opposing ends, a lot of it. But the thing with lockdown, and what I say now is to those people who seem to be advocating for that, is that there is no doubt the NHS is stressed, of course, because of all the staff shortages, because people are having to stay home who aren't even poorly, because they've got a positive test, which hopefully we can limit that time now, because it's not sustainable to go on like that. But the fact is that, the collateral damage of lockdown has been absolutely horrendous. I think it's OK. If we lock down, I can go home with my husband, with my garden, albeit a small one, and I can bake a banana bread and everything's fine. I've spoken to people who live in a tenement block in the middle of Newcastle. They have a violent partner. They have 3 children. They have not a you-know-what to you-know-what in. They have nothing. And when they have this constant sword of Damocles of we might go into lockdown, it is the most terrifying thing. Christina works for me. One of the people she knows in Wythenshawe has taken their own life yesterday because they're living in fear of all the time.
And baby Arthur.
Yeah, absolutely. The paramedics, Dan, in the northeast, who I speak to, said that some nights, 70% of their call-outs are mental health distress calls. And we are putting a veil over this. I know it's not easy. I know it's difficult. But the fact is that we can't live our lives just constantly propping up the NHS. And I will not be accused of it being our fault or COVID's fault when I've seen it from the inside. These NHS wonderful nurses and doctors are propping up this absolute disaster of a system where there is no communication between wards, there is no communication between doctors and nurses, there is no communication between doctors and patients. My dad was told he had cancer, then he didn't have cancer, that he was going to have surgery, then he was going home the next day, and I'm going, where's the umbrella over all of this? What is happening here? And that was when there wasn't a lot of COVID in there.
The other issue, Denise, no, it's so important. The other huge issue, of course, is the way that fear has been spread. And obviously we see it constantly with the folk who I call the doomsday duo, Whitty and Valence, and you've then got
and many of the TV
Professor
presenters.
Ferguson. Well, yes, and that's what I was going to say. It's then spread by the media, who almost make it worse, Denise. Why do you think the mainstream media, especially
Dan,
the lockdown fanatics at the BBC, have become so desperate for more restrictions? They want more restrictions.
You tell me. You and I have had our run-ins over the years when you were working as, you know, we really have. We've disagreed on many, many things.
Yeah, and I think that's important to be able to disagree.
I think it's very important. And
respect?
Respect, absolutely. I think the media coverage has been the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my entire life of this pandemic. It is like they absolutely, as soon as after the first wave, and we had those very terrifying nightly conferences, and it was all the deaths and deaths and deaths and deaths. And of course it was important to know what was going on. But I also was very vocal about saying, but every day 500 people die of cancer, 500 people die of heart disease. You know, we can't mentally take these deaths all the time.
But the BBC run the stats, the COVID stats every day, even now.
As soon as the deaths went down, it became cases.
Yeah.
It became about cases, and the cases don't matter. They certainly didn't matter so much, but it's almost that. But people seem, you know, obviously the click on.
But is it because it rates? Is it?
Of course, it's because it rates.
Fear sells.
Of course, it sells. There's some people who don't want this to go away, but also there has become a Covidian cult amongst normal people who don't want to. In 2020, when the first wave went away, I wasn't trying to say COVID's never coming back again. How do I know? All I was saying is we're learning a lot. They're proning patients. I've heard from doctors instead of ventilating. We now have the new drugs which are helping people who are in, you know, very serious illness. So we shouldn't go back to how it was. And I would say things like I would discover that, say, a hospital in the north had no COVID patients for 12 weeks. So I would do my research on that. I would then tweet such and such a hospital is delighted that they've had no COVID for 12 weeks. I always remember Pauline, whoever she is, putting, "You're grotesque." Oh. And I thought, oh, my God, I'm sorry that there aren't enough deaths, Pauline, for me to announce at this point, you know. And there is this
But even this week, you've got Sturgeon still trying to terrify Scots, failing to mention the fact that there has been one patient in a Scottish hospital with Omicron. Since the outbreak. One. 0 deaths, one patient in intensive care.
But what I don't understand, Dan, is what is the aim? We know that zero COVID isn't a possibility. And why is Nicola Sturgeon not seeing the collateral damage that it's doing to people? What about Mark Dreyford in Wales? What about him? And also, why are so many people still going along with it and not being vocal when they've seen the hypocrisy that we've had with all the number 10
Well,
with all the number 10
do you sense a change
parties
now, though? Do you sense a change?
Well, I sense a genuine change in some people. I sense a running with the fox and chasing with the hounds in some high-profile people who want to be on the right side
of history,
of history, which I believe. Obviously, if you speak out, you know, about against lockdowns, I've never died on the vaccine hill. I'm vaccinated, as you know. I'm pro-choice, but I'm vaccinated. But you know, if you speak out about this, even though you know you are declared to be this kind of rampant Trump supporter,
an anti-vax weirdo, and as we know, you're on the left side of politics.
I've always been left
and that's
of
often
centre.
what we disagree about.
Having said that, I am completely and utterly disillusioned by that. By the wokery that's going on, by the fact that so many of my left-wing compatriots, I thought, in the air have been totally silent about this, when our industry is the one that's most affected by these restrictions, when nobody's getting any money, you know. I was very vocal trying to support Excluded UK because some of the people in my industry, I don't just mean people in front of the camera or on stage, it's all of the technicians, it's the front of house, it's a huge
the
industry.
stagehands who didn't work for
thousands and thousands of people. Well, but if they'd had a good year a year before, they had no money, and they get no money when the shows come off now. So anyway.
Well, look, Denise, I have so much respect for you. We have disagreed on a lot, but I've always respected you, but especially over the past 22 months. And I'll tell you why. You didn't have to do this. There's no financial gain for you doing this. In fact,
really
you have
isn't.
probably lost work as a result of this. So thank you for speaking up, because you do speak for millions. And
thank you very much.
Talking
Thank
Denise
you.
Welch.